Witnessing my husband's selfish claim over the house of my late father, with whom we were living, as he declares, "I'm going to make my father-in-law's house mine. Can you really not understand anything?" My husband's shallow remark made me laugh beyond surprise. Seeing my long underestimated husband's family cornered by my retaliation. I, Katie Manning, had been living with my father and my husband, Ben. Since my mother passed away when I was in high school, my father raised me with endless love. My deep affection for my father remains unchanged. When I proposed living with my increasingly worrisome father to Ben, he warmly welcomed the idea of us living together in our home. "Are you really okay with this?" "I can manage on my own," my father asked me anxiously, a concern stemming from our cohabitation proposal. When I suggested living together, he initially smiled happily but soon looked worried. "I am always worried I might be a burden to you." My father always considered my feelings. However, after I expressed my desire to stay with him and Ben agreed, my father accepted with a smile. Today, Ben and I are moving into my childhood home. We began unpacking the boxes brought by the movers. "Again with this? Haven't I always said this is what I wanted?" "You're right, Dad. Plus, this place has better access to work, which is also convenient for me," we explained, and my father nodded with a faint smile. After unpacking, we found my father had prepared coffee for us. I was about to take a coffee break when I heard footsteps coming downstairs. "I thought you might want a break, so I prepared some for you too." Grateful for the warm hospitality, Ben and I enjoyed a break with him, feeling happy about the enriched life that lay ahead. After a short rest, we resumed unpacking, rolling up our sleeves for another push. "Hey, if you want, you can quit your job. It's okay to stay and support your father." During the work, Ben made a surprising proposal, pausing me in astonishment. "What do you mean?" "Think about it. Moving back here, we've cut down on our rent expenses, right? If you quit your job, taking care of your father and having fewer worries might be better, right? Currently, both of us work, with me mainly handling household chores. Though Ben helps sometimes, our days are still quite busy." I mulled over Ben's suggestion, feeling delighted at the prospect of spending more time with my father. Moreover, focusing on household chores seemed like it would reduce both mental and physical stress. Ben's proposal was very appealing, but it meant becoming financially dependent on him, which worried me. Grateful for his acceptance of the cohabitation, I pondered whether I should rely on Ben further. With a change of living environment, we decided to continue as before for now. Ben said, "I don't want you to overdo it, but the cohabitation proposal was mine." I felt I couldn't always depend on Ben. A month has passed. "Hey, maybe quitting your job for your father's sake is the best after all." When Ben suggested this again, I also thought it might be the best course of action. Living together turned out to lighten my daily load unexpectedly, mainly because my father took on household chores. Returning home, I found my father had already prepared dinner or cleaned the house. Yet, this seemed to increase his burden, making me feel guilty and contemplate quitting my job to take over the chores. "Yeah, I might do that. I feel bad putting financial pressure on you, Ben. What are you thinking? There's no need to worry about that." Hearing those words, I made up my mind to quit my job. When I told my father about this decision, he urged me to continue working and leave the household chores to him. But after expressing my desire to help with the chores, he understood. As a result, I chose to quit my job and dedicate myself to our home, leading to more fulfilling days spent with my father. However, gradually, changes began to appear in our lives. "I'm home. Welcome back, Ben. It must have been a tough day." "Yeah. Is dinner ready?" Ben's return home became later, and by the time he got back, my father was already asleep, decreasing the opportunities for us to eat together. Today, I was watching TV with Dad, but can you keep it down? I'm eating. Oh, sorry. When my father is nearby, Ben is as kind as he used to be. But lately, when it's just the two of us, he becomes quite cold. I feel like my quitting the job has added stress on him, and all I can do is apologize. After Ben finishes his dinner, I start to prepare his favorite evening drink, but he gets up to leave the dining area. "Where are you going?" "What about your drink?" "I'm going to take a bath," he answered shortly and left, closing the door behind him with a bang. Whether he's in a bad mood or simply tired, these days leave me unable to help but sigh. The next day, I wait for Ben's return after my father has gone to sleep, but even past midnight, he hasn't come home. Worried, I try calling him but get no response. Just as I start to panic, thinking something has happened, an email arrives. "What?" The cold text of the email seemed to convey his feelings. Despite sighing, I felt relieved that he was safe. "Still at work?" "I was worried because it's late," I replied, and his response came quickly. "On a business trip." Those few words let me know he wouldn't be coming home tonight. I hadn't been informed about the trip, and I wish he had told me sooner, but expressing that might only irritate him further. "So, you're on a business trip, got it. How long will you be away?" I sent this message, but no reply came. After that, Ben's business trips became more frequent, and he stopped telling me when he would leave or return home. My father, trying to be considerate, would ask about the situation when Ben was home, and he would answer with a cheerful smile that no longer seemed directed at me. "No problem, I'm working hard for our family." Seeing his reaction made me feel like he was dissatisfied with me, and though I suggested we talk, he would say, "I'm just busy," or "I'm tired. Let's talk later," and we never had a serious discussion. Eventually, Ben rarely returned home. Amidst growing distrust, I began to suspect he might be having an affair when I unexpectedly received a message from my mother-in-law. "I need the address of the company Ben works for." A one-line email without any greetings. My in-laws have not been fond of me since the beginning of our marriage, throwing harsh words and malicious actions my way, leading to a natural distance between us. Ben understood this situation, and although it never worsened our relationship due to my in-laws' issues, it didn't improve either, and we continued to keep our distance. Receiving this sudden email from my mother-in-law, I pondered its intent before replying. "It's been a while. May I know why you need Ben's work address?" After sending this reply, it seemed she was indeed upset, as I immediately received an angry call. "Hello, it's been a while." It's been a while. You've made Ben take care of your father and quit your job to do nothing at home. How can you do such a thing? Because of you, he's now returned to our house. He forgot his lunchbox today and went to the office, so I'm trying to deliver it. What are you going to do about this attitude? It's unforgivable. Give me the address right away. And from now on, Ben will be living at our house." Shocked by my mother-in-law's angry words, I was left speechless. It turned out that the days Ben claimed to be away on business trips, he had actually returned to his parents' home. Learning how my in-laws spoke about me was deeply shocking. It was Ben who said it would be okay for me to quit my job, yet I couldn't help but feel his true intentions were different. Overwhelmed with sadness, I felt like I couldn't stop my tears. Without arguing, I simply provided Ben's work address and ended the call. Trying to calm myself, I made some coffee in the living room when my father came in. Asking him if he would like some coffee with a smile as usual, he looked at me, smiled back, and accepted. As we enjoyed our coffee, my father started talking about the past. "Your mom and I used to argue a lot when we were young. There were many misunderstandings, but we always tried to be honest with each other, and that's how we solved many issues. Couples who can argue and then fix their relationship might understand each other better and become stronger," he said warmly. His words deeply resonated with me, and I decided to have a serious conversation with Ben. "That's true, Dad?" "Thank you," I told him, and he responded with a kind smile. Afterward, I sent an email to Ben outlining the facts from my conversation with his mother and expressing my desire to talk. However, Ben replied dismissively, making me sigh deeply. Anger towards Ben began to build inside me. I wanted to respond immediately in my emotional state, but took a deep breath to calm myself. This situation led to Ben stopping his contributions to our household finances. Attempts to contact him were met with silence, and messages about living expenses were ignored. My love for him gradually faded due to his selfish behavior. Finding no meaning in our marriage, thoughts of divorce crossed my mind. I was disappointed in Ben for being so irresponsible and self-centered. However, not wanting to worry my father further, I decided to postpone discussions about divorce and support myself using my savings from before we were married. Getting used to Ben's absence, I enjoyed my days with my father until he suddenly fell ill. Rushed to the hospital, we were told he didn't have much time left. Overwhelmed and unable to stop my tears, I couldn't hear the doctors or nurses. Visiting my father's room, he tried to smile and apologized for worrying me. Holding his hand, I smiled back, saying, "Don't worry, you'll get better," despite my eyes swelling with tears. Seeing my father, who looked sad despite laughing and asking, "What's with that face?" I felt tears welling up in my eyes again. Because hospitalization was necessary, I temporarily returned home to prepare what was needed. However, upon returning to my childhood home alone, I was overwhelmed by a sense of loneliness, and I couldn't stop my tears. This house, where I grew up since I was a child. Even though I had left it when I got married, this place is filled with countless memories. Unable to bear the loneliness of being alone, I simply cried incessantly. During this difficult time, I received a cold message from Ben. "Since we're living separately, handle your own expenses. Maybe use your father-in-law's pension?" Reading this, I threw my phone in frustration. All my feelings for Ben vanished at that moment. Shaken by anger and sorrow, I realized dwelling on my feelings for Ben was a waste. Wondering how my father would feel seeing me like this calmed my mind. Regaining my composure, I washed my face and prepared to leave for the hospital. Just then, I received mail containing good news that could change my current situation. Seeing this, I made up my mind. Leaving the documents at home for now, I hurried to the hospital. My father's condition worsened gradually, and I had to accept that our time to say goodbye was nearing. Days passed with joyous conversations at the hospital, only to return home to tears. Eventually, my father passed away peacefully. I was there to witness his serene departure, but the sense of loss overwhelmed me, leaving me in tears. However, the legacy my father left was immeasurable and deeply etched in my heart. The funeral, with the help of relatives, went smoothly, but Ben and my in-laws did not show up until the end. I hadn't specifically informed them about my father's passing, so I hadn't expected them to attend. Nonetheless, it seemed they had learned of his death through relatives because, a few days after settling the estate and paperwork, Ben suddenly appeared with a lot of luggage. "It's been a while. I heard your father passed away." Seeing Ben's face stirred anger within me, but I suppressed the impulse and took a deep breath to remain calm. "What do you want? What's with the luggage? Isn't that a bit harsh for a husband returning home?" "Oh, this luggage is my parents' stuff." "Huh?" The fact that Ben used the word husband was profoundly irritating. His words made no sense to me. After he had left the house, stopped providing for living expenses, and lived as he pleased, claiming now to be a husband was beyond surprising. It was appalling. I was at a loss for words. Were you waiting for me? Jobless, struggling with living expenses, and left alone to care for your father? Happy, are you? So happy you're speechless? No, it seems I was the one caught in your plan. Ben's mention of a plan caught my attention, prompting me to ask for clarification. The answer I received was unbelievable. Living with an old man was something I couldn't accept. Impossible to live with the elderly. But saying that might make you think about divorce. If we divorced, I couldn't get this house. So, I chose to live together and pushed you into unemployment by pretending to be the ideal husband, making you dependent on me and the elderly man. That way, the house would become mine. Hearing his words, I found myself glaring at Ben sharply. This was not normal thinking. Reflecting on our marriage made me despise myself and feel deep guilt towards my father. I struggled to contain my trembling anger. Your story doesn't add up. You're the one who left and stopped paying the living expenses. When I pointed this out, Ben scratched his head in annoyance. Yeah, I had reached my limit. I didn't realize I was so short-tempered. But I thought the plan would work even without me, assuming you wouldn't have the courage to bring up divorce. His smug smile made me forget what had ever attracted me to him. I no longer wanted to see his face or hear his voice. My feelings towards Ben had become unbearable. The plan worked. This house might be old, but it's spacious and well located. It'll be worth a lot when sold. From today, my parents and I will live here. Could there be anyone more self-centered? It seemed morality was foreign to him, which wasn't surprising considering his parents. As I stood dumbfounded, he continued to insult me further. The house of your father is mine. Get out. Watching my in-laws' belongings being moved in, I realized Ben was completely oblivious to the situation. Ben looked down on me confidently, disrespecting my father and making it impossible to leave things as they were. Seeing Ben standing there so smugly made me burst into laughter, unable to hold it back. My sudden laughter confused Ben. Have you lost your mind? That's the perfect description for you. The thought of confronting him with reality made my laughter uncontrollable. Seeing me laugh, Ben became furious. However, ignoring his reaction, I laid out the reality. Don't you know? This is my house. It could never become yours. Surprised and frozen by my words, I continued. Besides, you and I are now unrelated. Didn't your mother tell you? Laughing as I said this, Ben seemed utterly stunned. Then, he immediately started contacting someone on his smartphone, apparently his mother. What, Mom? Katie's saying something weird. We haven't divorced, have we? She said I hadn't heard anything from you. What do you mean, you sent it? Really? How did this happen? Watching Ben's speechless reaction, it seemed he finally grasped the situation. After ending the call, Ben's expression was twisted as if he was looking at something incomprehensible. Did you really submit a divorce application? He asked. Yes, I did. The day your father was taken to the hospital, your mother sent me a completed divorce form by post, which I happily submitted the next day. Your mother has her moments, doesn't she? I replied. Damn it. Even if it arrived, you weren't supposed to submit it. It was something my mother made me write just in case, not intending to actually divorce. Ben was furious. But you filled it out yourself, didn't you? Whether or not you intended to doesn't matter. I completed the divorce process as you wished, so you should be thanking me, I calmly retorted. Seeing Ben frustrated, I felt a sense of relief inside. The divorce form from my mother-in-law might have been intended as harassment, but for me, wanting a divorce, it was a stroke of luck. Later, Ben anxiously questioned me about property division and the house's ownership, but I dismissed his concerns. It was clear there were no significant assets to divide, so I informed him there was no need for division. I explained that due to the short cohabitation period with my father and the assets being in my father's name at the time of the divorce, they were not subject to division. Ben insisted on a financial demand, claiming even my savings from before marriage should be split, but I informed him his claims had no basis. He turned pale, attempting to argue but only opening and closing his mouth, resembling a fish out of water. Though tempted to mock him, I chose to maintain a mature demeanor and calm myself. Let's send this here. It's problematic for someone to bring their belongings into another person's home uninvited, which clearly constitutes trespassing. If you plan to stay any longer, I'll have to call the police. As I said this, Ben hurriedly gathered his belongings and left. I spread salt at the entrance and prayed to my parents' portraits. This is for the best. I'll become stronger, so please watch over me. Thinking of my parents meeting again in heaven eased my loneliness and lightened my heart. Emboldened by this new resolve, I began looking for a job. It was then that a friend contacted me, knowing I was job hunting, and offered to introduce me to a job that matched my expertise. Thanks to their recommendation, I quickly secured a position after an interview with HR. A few days later, I received a message from Ben. Sorry for being stubborn the other day. Actually, I wanted to start over with you, which is why I came to the house. Finding the message unbelievable, I struggled with how to reply but ultimately decided to ignore it. Yet, Ben continued to send poetic messages like a relentless suitor. Once, we were like the sun and the moon. Days spent longing for you, unreachable, are now behind us. Now, we can be closer. Without your love, I'm nothing. Won't you give me your overflowing love once more? I'll dedicate everything to you. I treasure you more than anything. Our love will last forever. No matter where I am, I'll continue to love you, for your heart is my home. Each time I received these poetic messages, I shared them with colleagues, wondering if they could serve as material for work. Currently working as an illustrator in a cartoon editorial department, these emails sometimes prove to be useful inspiration. Look, the melodramatic stalker is back. It's great to have something to laugh about in tough times. Unknowingly, Ben has become a source of amusement. Feeling only discomfort from his messages, I've been avoiding replying. Amid these days, the doorbell at my home rang. Looking through the peephole, I saw Ben standing outside. I had never expected him to show up in person, so I decided to call the police immediately. "Hey, I know you're in there. I can see your car. Please, just listen to me. I'm really in trouble right now." There was talk of moving into this house, so my parents sold their home. Now, I have nowhere to go. Help me. I could hear his voice shouting from outside, but what does that have to do with me? It highlights his recklessness for not correcting the situation the day they misunderstood this house as their own. His emails showed he hadn't given up, but I was merely astonished by his and his family's naive thinking. While the police were convincing Ben to leave, he resisted strongly but was eventually taken away by them. After that, when there was no response to the flood of Romeo emails, contacts from my in-laws began. At first, they tried calling, but when I ignored that, they switched to emails. "How can you know we're in a difficult situation and not offer any help? You should contact us immediately. Why not have a serious discussion? We were once a family. Isn't it too cruel to be so indifferent? You caused us to lose our home. Now we live in a dilapidated apartment. Why won't you hand over the house? You must have received inheritance from your father. You're not struggling financially. We quit our jobs. You should take responsibility. If the child is like this, of course, the parents are too. Do they think their decisions will always prevail?" I was infuriated by the audacious emails. How can they disregard others to such an extent? Although I intended to ignore them, I ended up blocking Ben and my in-laws' contacts. I considered changing my contact information, but it felt ridiculous to spend money just because of them. I was determined to ignore them, but I reached my limit. I optimistically thought blocking them would restore my peace, but soon realized my approach was short-sighted. One day, my former in-laws showed up at my doorstep. Despite being fed up with their endless harassment, understanding they knew my address made me realize such incidents were inevitable. However, I did not want to leave this house filled with many memories. "Come out, you know we're in trouble. Change your mood? I'm proposing we get back together, accept it. How can you ignore someone in trouble? What kind of human does that?" The doorbell and knocking were incessant, but I did not hesitate to call the police. Suddenly, the noise from outside stopped. Peeking through the hole, I saw an unfamiliar man arguing with my former in-laws. "Go home, you're bothering people." The sudden appearance of the man puzzled my former in-laws. "What did you say? Who are you? Could it be an affair partner?" Unfazed by their backlash, the man looked at them coldly. "Your attitude is the problem. Look around. This is a residential area. Look, people are gathering because of you. You're really causing a disturbance." Indeed, through the limited view of the peephole, I could see neighbors gathering, which felt somewhat embarrassing. However, seeing my former family flustered and stuttering but was when the police arrived. It seemed one of the officers had encountered this scene before, saying to Ben, "It's you guys again." Hearing this, my former in-laws' faces turned red. "How much trouble are you going to cause? Get some awareness." I silently thanked the man as he walked away, relieved. Afterward, my former in-laws were taken away in a police vehicle, and the onlookers dispersed. Hours later, the doorbell rang again, and peering through the peephole, I saw the man from the earlier argument standing there. Surprised to see him, I hesitated before cautiously opening the door. The man greeted me with a warm smile. "It's been a while. If you were back, you should have let me know." I recognized his face, but I couldn't immediately recall who he was until he reintroduced himself. "Don't tell me you've forgotten. It's been over 10 years, after all. Remember me? I'm Scott." Hearing his name, memories flooded back. Scott, my childhood friend known as Scotty in our hometown. Scotty. Now that you mention it, you really are Scotty. Scott used to live next door and we hadn't seen each other since changing elementary schools. Finally remembered, I've moved back to the area. We're neighbors again. It's really been a long time. And thank you for earlier. It meant a lot to me. After expressing my gratitude again, Scott just laughed it off, making me smile too. We caught up on old times, and I ended up telling him about the recent disturbances. Scott promised to support me whenever needed, proving to be a reliable friend. When I mentioned my father's passing, Scott offered to pay his respects, remembering him from our childhood. The joy of having someone who shared my past was profound. Days passed, and I received a letter from a law firm out of the blue containing a notification. Opening the unexpected envelope, I found it claimed I had committed infidelity during my marriage, demanding payment for damages. Shocked by the situation, I noticed a message from an unknown email address on my smartphone titled regarding the notification. The message read, "Your ex-husband Ben has initiated a lawsuit claiming marital infidelity on your part. Admitting and dealing with this straightforwardly will avoid escalating the matter. We plan to inform your workplace. Considering your future, we advise settling this matter promptly," suggesting a threat. It was clear this was a scheme by my former in-laws, not a genuine liar's notification. Upon closer inspection, the quality of the notification raised doubts about its authenticity, prompting me to consult a real lawyer. The lawyer confirmed it was a complete forgery, and the supposed attorney's name was not registered, revealing the document as fake. Despite knowing better, I decided to play along in my reply, indicating a willingness to consider their claims but asking for evidence of my supposed infidelity. "The alleged mental anguish suffered by Ben is immense, and we seek compensation for that," they replied, without any tangible proof. Such baseless claims seemed unlikely to involve legal professionals. I assert there was no infidelity on my part, hence no evidence exists. It's hard to believe professionals would intervene based on such unfounded claims, wouldn't you agree? Moved by Ben's passion, we wish to assist him. We expect your sincere cooperation, not intending to escalate this matter further. Quite an emotional approach for a professional. You're aware impersonating a lawyer is illegal and punishable, right? Just to confirm, you do hold legitimate qualifications? This inquiry halted their previously prompt responses. Curious about the next move, I received a new email. "I am indeed a professional. However, your arguments were unbeatable. We've decided to withdraw the lawsuit. No need for withdrawal, as I have no passion for this matter and am entirely calm about being falsely accused of infidelity. I intend to legally counter this. Looking forward to meeting this passionate lawyer in court." After this exchange, all communication ceased. However, the silence did not last long as my former in-laws once again showed up at my house. Despite it being late at night, they started begging loudly at the front door, "We made a mistake. Please spare us from the lawsuit." Awakened by the noise, I checked the time and it was past 1 a.m. Anger at being deprived of sleep reached its peak, and I yelled, "Please be quiet. Stop bothering me." Never having seen me so angry before, my former in-laws couldn't hide their surprise. "If you come any closer and cause more trouble, I won't overlook it." With that declaration and grabbing my father's wooden sword that was at hand, my former in-laws' expressions changed drastically. Especially my former mother-in-law and Ben, who seemed to tremble in fear, whispering, "We're so sorry. You should have changed your actions from the beginning if you were sorry. Never appear before me again." I scolded, and my former mother-in-law nodded with tears in her eyes. Then, the lights of a patrol car caught my eye, heading our way. Due to the late hour, it seemed neighbors had reported them, and my former in-laws were immediately taken away by the arriving officers. They tried to attack me with a wooden sword. My former mother-in-law pointed at me and appealed to the police, but she was taken away. When the police asked me, "Is this true?" I explained the doorbell kept ringing and someone was banging on the door at this hour, so I took the wooden sword for self-defense, to which they nodded understandingly. Scott was by my side and told the police he had witnessed the former in-law's repeated visits. With his testimony, the police deemed the actions malicious and promptly took my former in-laws away, finally restoring peace. The next day, following Scott's advice, I filed a report. With multiple incidents involving the police already, the process went smoothly. Scott mentioned he had noticed the former in-law's assault the previous night and was about to say something when he heard me shouting. According to him, my voice was terrifying. Subsequently, a restraining order was issued against my former in-laws, and they never troubled me again. Moreover, someone had recorded the commotion, and the footage ended up on the internet, making them the secret talk of the neighborhood, unable to move due to lack of financial means. It's unclear how they're living now, but they're probably relying on the former in-laws' retirement funds. As for me, Scott and I grew closer rapidly, and within a few months of reuniting, he confessed his love and we started dating. Scott always makes me smile, and the time he spent with him is genuinely happy. I feel like this turn of events is a gift from my father, filling me with gratitude.